So that thought and her natural inquisitiveness about the source of light persuaded her to her feet and into the tunnel. The adit became narrower and lower as she crept forward, so that she had to go down on her hands and knees, sometimes flat on her stomach. Although she was out of the wind now, it seemed colder, and she felt she was moving downwards for a minute or two, for the blood was coming to her head and her weight was heavy on her hands. Then, quite suddenly, she found the ground levelling out and saw a large tunnel ahead of her. There was no doubt as to which way she should turn, for one way the tunnel was black, and the other way was lighted with candles that lined the load wall as far as she could see. And she called out, "Anyone there? Anyone there?" She paused to listen for the reply, but all she could hear now was the muffled roar of the sea and the continuous echoing of the dripping water. The tunnel widened now, and she found she could walk upright again, but her feet hurt against the stone, and so she moved slowly, feeling her way gently with each foot. She had gone only a short distance when she heard the tapping for the first time, distinct and rhythmic, a sound that was instantly recognisable as hammering. It became sharper and noticeably more metallic as she moved up the tunnel. She could hear the distant murmur of voices and the sound of falling stone, and even before she came out of the tunnel and into the vast cave, she knew she had happened upon a working mine. The cave was dark in all but one corner, and here she could see two men bending to their work, their backs towards her. One of them was inspecting the rock face closely, whilst the other swung his hammer with controlled power, pausing only to spit on his hands from time to time. They wore round hats with turned-up brims that served also as candlesticks, for a lighted candle was fixed to each, the light dancing with the shadows along the cave walls as they worked. Cherry watched for some moments until she made up her mind what to do. She longed to rush up to them and tell of her escape and to ask them to take her to the surface, but a certain shyness came over her and she held back. Her chance to interrupt came when they sat down against the rock face and opened their canteens. She was in the shadows and they still could not see her.
"Tea looks cold again," one of them said gruffly. "'Tis always cold. I'm sure she makes it with cold water."
"Oh, stop your moaning, father," said the other, a younger voice Cherry felt. "She does her best. She's 5 little ones to look after and precious little to do it on. She does her best. You mustn't keep on at her so. It upsets her. She does her best."
"Oh, so she does, lad, so she does. And for that matter, so do I. But that don't stop her moaning at me, and it'll not stop me moaning at her. If we didn't moan at each other, lad, we'd have precious little to talk about. And that's a fact. She expects it of me, lad, and I expects it of her."
"Excuse me," Cherry said tentatively. She felt she had eavesdropped for long enough. She approached them slowly. "Excuse me, but I've got a bit lost. I climbed the cliff, you see, because I was cut off from the cove. I was trying to get back, but I couldn't, and I saw this light, so I climbed up. I want to get home, and I wondered if you could help me get to the top."
"Top?"
said the older one, peering in the dark.
"Come closer, lad, where we can see you."
"She's not a lad, father. Are you blind? Can you not see? 'Tis a filly, 'tis a young filly all wet through from the sea. Come," the young man said, standing up and beckoning Cherry in. "Don't be afeard, little girl. We shan't harm you. Come on, you can have some of my tea if you like." They spoke their words in a manner Cherry had never heard before. It was not the usual Cornish burr, but heavier and rougher in tone, more old-fashioned somehow. There were so many questions in her mind. "But I thought the mine was closed 100 years ago," she said nervously. "That's what I was told anyway."
"Well, you was told wrong,"
said the old man, whom Cherry could see more clearly now under his candle. His eyes were white and set far back in his head, unnaturally so, she thought, and his lips and mouth seemed a vivid red in the candlelight.
"Closed? Closed? Indeed, does it look closed to you? Do you think we're digging for worms? Over 4,000 tons of tin last year and 9,000 of copper ore, and you ask if the mine is closed? Over 20 fathoms below the sea this mine goes. But we'll dig right out under the ocean halfway to America before we close down this mine."
He spoke passionately now, almost angrily, so that Cherry felt she had offended him. "Hush, father," said the young man, taking off his jacket and wrapping it round Cherry's shoulders. "She doesn't want to hear all about that. She's cold and wet, can't you see? Now let's make a little fire to warm her through. She's shivered right through to her bones. You can see she is."
"They all are,"
said the old tinner, pulling himself to his feet.
They all are.
And he shuffled past her into the dark.
I'll fetch the wood, he muttered,
and then added,
for all the good it'll do.
What does he mean? Cherry asked the young man, for whom she felt an instant liking. What did he mean by that?
Oh, pay him no heed, little girl, he said. He's an old man now and tired of the mine. We're both tired of it, but we're proud of it, see, and we've nowhere else to go. Nothing else to do.
He had a kind voice that was reassuring to Cherry. He seemed somehow to know the questions she wanted to ask, for he answered them now without her even asking. Sit down by me while you listen, girl, he said. Father will make a fire to warm you, and I shall tell you how we came to be here. You won't be afeard now, will you? Cherry looked up into his face, which was younger than she had expected from his voice, but like his father's, the eyes seemed sad and deep-set. Yet they smiled at her gently, and she smiled back. That's my girl. It was a new mine, this, promising. Everyone said, the best tin in Cornwall, and that means the best tin in the world. 1865 it started up, and they were looking for tinners, and so Father found a cottage down by Treville and came to work here. I was already 14, so I joined him down the mine. We prospered, and the mine prospered to start with. Mother and the little children had full bellies, and there was talk of sinking a fresh shaft. Times were good and promised to be better. Cherry sat transfixed as the story of the disaster unfolded. She heard how they'd been trapped by a fall of rock, about how they had worked to pull them away, but behind every rock was another rock, and she heard how they had never even heard any sound of rescue. They had died, he said, in 2 days or so because the air was bad and because there was too little of it. Father has never accepted it. He still thinks he's alive and that he goes home to Mother and the little children each evening. But he's dead, just like me. I can't tell him, though, for he'd not understand, and it would break his heart if he ever knew. So, you aren't real? I'm just imagining all this. You're just a dream?
No dream, my girl, said the young man, laughing out loud. No more than we're imagining you. We're real, right enough, but we're dead, and have been for 100 years and more. Ghosts, spirits, that's what living folk call us. Come to think of it, that's what I called us when we were alive. Cherry was on her feet suddenly and backing away.
No need to be afeard, little girl, said the young man, holding out his hand towards her. We won't harm you. No one can harm you, not now. Look, he started the fire already. Come and warm yourself. Come, it'll be all right, girl. We'll look after you. We'll help you.
But I want to go home, Cherry said, feeling the panic rising to her voice and trying to control it. I know you're kind, but I want to go home. My mother will be worried about me. They'll be out looking for me. Your light saved my life, and I want to thank you, but I must go, else they'll worry themselves sick. I know they will. You going back home? The young man asked, and then he nodded. Yeah, I suppose you'll want to see your family again. Of course I am, said Cherry, perplexed by the questions. Of course I do. 'Tis a pity, he said sadly. Everyone passes through and no one stays. They all want to go home, but then... So do I. You'll want me to guide you to the surface, I suppose.